Patrick, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. It's a beautiful Friday, so can't complain.
Yes, happy Friday. Thank you so much for being on. I thought you'd be a very interesting person to speak with because of your experience in link building and your active experience in link building. So I think this will be a very interesting conversation. I want to get through your background.
The old link building.
Yep, that's it. I want to touch on your background in SEO, and we can delve straight into link building. I want to get your take on a number of SEO tools, as well as the SEO community at large. So if you're all good with that, I think I'll go ahead and start with what I normally start with, as I like to do with all my SEO guests. I like to ask how they got into SEO. So with that said, what was your route into the SEO industry?
The crazy world of SEO. It's a wild industry for sure. And we all have our story of how we got into it. Mine is in high school. One of my best friends' dad owned an SEO agency. And so at that time, I've always been doing digital marketing. So at that time, I was doing YouTube. I was making video game content. And one of my videos got almost 1 million views. And so I was telling him that, and he was like, "Oh, wow," he thought it was impressive. "Oh, wow, why don't you come into the office?" And so he kind of gave me an interview. Of course, I was working for like $12 an hour, but that was good in high school, so I wasn't mad. And it all started from there. His name was Craig Lawson, so that's Click Ready Marketing. Still a great agency. I enjoyed working there. I learned a ton, and he got me up to speed very quickly on keyword research, link building, all of that, and content marketing. So he got me up to speed in about just a year of working there. Then after that, that's how I got my start. And then I went into the crazy freelancing and agency world, like my own, because he actually was so kind to see the entrepreneurial spirit and just let me free. He was like, "Yeah, you know what? I love it. Go out and create your own thing." And he's referred me clients. He's just been a huge mentor and really I've appreciated everything he's done.
That's awesome.
That was my entry into the SEO industry. And then it goes all kinds of twists and turns from there.
Do you have a favorite area of SEO?
That's a good question. So I love e-commerce SEO, especially because it's so close to revenue. But I also love link building and content marketing. So some of my best work, I think, in terms of companies I've made the most money for, has been link building for e-commerce stores. And so that's including, infographics, including the whole 9 yards, outreach, social media outreach, email. So doing all of that. And so those are some of my greatest case studies. And I do love that aspect of it. I love nerding out on hrefs, going into backlink data, I find that all fun. No, continue.
No, go for it.
No, I didn't have anything to say. It wasn't important.
Okay. So let's get onto link building then. It's a very interesting area of SEO, especially these days. I would say especially post Penguin. And how a lot of people tend to shy away from link building. Even the word link building tends not to be mentioned these days. But it's an essential aspect. It's an essential part of SEO. So
it is, because if you look at any search result, you look at so many search results and you just see these major companies that have nothing relevant. They're not at all about the topic, but just because they're like Wirecutter or they're Forbes or they're like usnews.com, pure link building, like pure link quality. Like they have so many links, they can rank for anything.
Right. So would you say that's the more important aspect of SEO?
No. So I think that you can't really say what's the most important aspect. And you probably know this because it's really dependent on the website and their situation.
Yeah.
It's the old it depends. But
Yeah.
how I like to think of that is, what do you do in what order? So you start off with on page. You start off with title tag changes, those things. Then you do internal links. Then or content optimization. Those are kind of like similar, but you start off with on-page content optimization, internal link optimization, and then you might consider backlinks. And now, what is the most powerful? Well, if you already have a ton of backlinks and you do on-page and you've never done it before, that's going to be a very quick win. But I think there is an argument to be made that in a lot of cases, the thing people are ignoring is link building. And because they've done the on page, they've done some internal links, and link building is difficult. Nobody really wants to do it. And it's often the mover that I've found for certain websites. If you've done those three things and you're not seeing results with SEO, it may be link building that you need.
Okay, so let's say I'm a client, right? And I go to an agency, and they say they used to focus on link building. And they explained to me link building is essentially two parts: the content part of it, and then the outreach part of it. And the outreach is carried out by digital PR. What's your take on non-SEOs these days carrying out the outreach part of link building?
I think that's okay if they understand the SEO aspects, which they may not. But if they understand what makes a quality link, and making sure that there is links involved and that it's not just mentioned,
Right.
then I totally think that's fine. I think digital PR is great. You have people like Ferry and others that with search intelligence that are doing amazing work. I guess that's more SEO focused. But digital PR is great. And, it's very similar to sort of link building. It's just kind of coming at it from a different angle.
Different angle. What's required for a successful outreach these days?
So that's a good question. I would say first off, some level of scale. Like you're not going to wake up one morning, send 10 emails and get a link. Unfortunately, people are just they're too saturated these days. Like people's emails, outreach emails, they pretty much have to be at scale, or they have to be very hyper personalized, and not at mega scale, but you should be sending quite a few emails. Like typically I'm sending hundreds per month. And so first off, you need some level of scale. Now, second, you need to segment a lot. So you need to segment a lot. You need to figure out really who's you're reaching out to. I mean, even in just like, we can go through like a basic guest post campaign if we wanted to, and just look at that from the process there with angles and stuff like that. But you want to really segment, like this very specific type of blog, type of website, segment down really well. And then at least how I do it is you write an email script that's hyper personalized to them, so that you can do it at some level of scale. Right. Even if you're personalizing it a lot, you don't really want to be writing completely new emails every time, just because then it takes an hour per prospect.
Yeah.
And at least for me, like if I write especially like with sales, like if I'm writing brand new emails, which in sales is actually worth doing, like cold outreach, I'll spend an hour on an email, but that's not very scalable.
How do you address
So you do want to,
Sorry, go ahead.
you do want some scale.
Some skill.
How do I address what?
So how do you address the typical question? How long will it take to get me to number one?
Yeah. I've heard Daniel Carter and other people say that this is like, you can't give an answer to this question. And I love that guy, man. I love him. I love all that, those kind of people, the big SEO, geniuses. And yeah, of course, in like the most general statement, you can just say no, right? Like you can't give any estimates really. But like, of course, people need some level of estimate. That's like also saying you can't forecast at all, which you can't, but you have to give some idea of here's what to expect. And I think the general idea of like 3 to 6 months is okay. Now, if you're talking about link building specifically, it's weird because that's typically an even longer strategy.
Right.
And you never really know. But like, if you're doing pretty aggressive work, 3 to 6 months, you should be seeing signs. You should be seeing impressions increase, clicks increase. So all of that, on most projects, you should see that pretty quickly. Sometimes you'll see it in as short of like as a month, like if you did a lot of work in a month, you optimize the entire website, you may see some nice results. But yeah, that's an age-old question. That can be difficult.
Is there like an incorrect or wrong way to go about link building that a brand should be conscious of?
Yeah, definitely. Because I've audited a lot of link building that's going on right now. And here's what you want to be conscious of is that you're not building links on websites that talk about every topic in the universe. In the entire, like, because what you'll see is that you'll have a website, you'll be getting links from a website, and it will say, in the navigation, digital marketing, writing, like scuba diving, yeah. Whatever else. These are just basic signs that you're getting on link farms or PBNs, or just really bad websites. So that's what I've seen before of companies doing it in the wrong way is just, building dozens and dozens of links per month and the websites have no traffic. So, I mean, sometimes they're not even indexed by Google, but right. Google is not giving them any traffic or they're giving them like, a few clicks a month. So it just seems obvious that Google won't value those websites very much if they're not sending any users to them. So that's kind of the biggest way to not do link building is you do need traffic. Right. Nobody knows, the perfect link. Only Google knows. But you need traffic and you need a level of relevance there. So it has to make some sense, right? It can't just be random. It has to make sense for the website to link to you.
Right. Yeah, link building, it's a very interesting area of SEO. As I said, a number of SEOs like to stay away from it or call it link earning or go via digital PR these days. But it's still an essential part of SEO and pre-Penguin, pretty much everyone talked about link building. It was like synonymous with SEO, but nowadays it's just dwindled. But it's still important for brands to know that actually having backlinks is an important part of your digital presence to help your website grow, to help the authority of your website.
It is critical. Because if you're doing SEO and you're not getting the results that you want, and so you're not getting the traffic, you're not ranking anywhere, but you have done SEO, there's a big chance it's because you're not competitive with links. So you may, in a lot of cases, you may already have a lot of links. And so in those cases, you can just do basic SEO and you should rank pretty well. But in other cases, all your competitors have, say, thousands of backlinks that are decent quality, and you have like 500. And so in that case, which I've seen before quite often, doing a link building campaign and trying to acquire like 100 links or more is going to have a profound impact if you're set up with SEO and just getting close to where your competitors are. And so you should do a link audit, and you should figure out where your competitors' links are versus you. And if there's a big gap there, that's a sign that link building is crucial for the campaign.
And you mentioned campaign. How long does a campaign normally last for? And is there a point where you no longer need to carry out link building?
Yeah, there is a point where you don't have to carry out link building. The simplest way of thinking about it is that you're near your competitors now. So you've gotten the benefit. And I've had this with clients. You've gotten the benefit. You've increased traffic. Like, in one example I've had is we increased traffic by over 100%, like 20,000 monthly users purely from link building. But then at that point, they're now competitive with they're at a similar place to all their competition. And so we've slowed down link building a ton. And we still do it because I almost always find value in some level of link building, even if it's just a couple, like a link here and there when I find it will help content or money pages. And so, but yeah, you definitely want to scale back once you've gotten all the gold and you've really done your thing. Yeah. So there was a second part of that question. What was it?
Is there a point where you end link building?
Oh yeah, no, I answered that. Okay, I didn't know if there was a second part. But yeah, so there is a point where you want to roll back a little bit,
scale it back. Yeah. I saw on your LinkedIn you have an interesting take around SEO tools. You say the most powerful SEO tool is your brain. Please expand on this.
So this is taken from one of my other mentors. So I told you my story briefly with Craig Lawson, but he introduced me to Emery Rowland. And so Emery is much more of a technical SEO guy. And he's a consultant. He's been doing it since, like 20 years. So he's one of those people that just have seen the entire industry grow from pretty much nothing. And so Emery's a great friend of mine and mentor. And that was kind of his philosophy, which is don't rely on all these tools, especially like as more of a consultant, like agencies focus a ton on tools. They're just plopping out reports and and giving it to clients. But the consultant really needs to be careful with that. And they need to look at websites. They need to look at the source code on pages. They need to not just export a screaming frog report and call it a day or an SEMrush report, but actually go through that data and prioritize it. Because anybody can export, a report. And half the time, once you really dig in, those recommendations are terrible. Like, they don't need to be done. Most basic technical stuff, it's just not important. And like, you see brands and companies spending so many resources to like change, like alt text on images. And it's like, you don't need to, like in 99% of the case, you should be focusing on what matters. And so if you're just looking at, we have 2,000 images without alt text, and then you spend, like $15,000 of time, it just doesn't make sense. And that often happens with SEMrush audits and even Screaming Frog audits. And so that was my essential point there, is that really the best thing to do is you should use tools, because there are certain ones Like, I'm a huge fan of Screaming Frog. But like, I've still look at a website, and just by clicking around, like this morning I was doing it, just by clicking around, I'll find things that are technical issues that Screaming Frog doesn't pick up. And sometimes the biggest issues will be not picked up by many tools. Typically, they're just kind of like things you notice on Google Search Console, which is a tool, right. But it's not like Google Search Console doesn't feed you it, right? Like, it's kind of like you notice these patterns in there of like, oh, they're not indexing pages, this or that. And so, yeah, a huge part of SEO is analysis and not relying too heavily on tools.
Yeah.
But they're still, required.
Now, why are some the way some brands use Google Search Console can be seen as incorrect? How do you imagine this occurs at a brand client side?
How are they using it incorrectly?
Yeah. So let's say someone who works brand side is using Google Search Console to gather insights or data. How do you reckon some are using these incorrectly? Like, what is the a process that you see they're using that is leading to either getting incorrect insights or not using it appropriately? What I'm getting at is, do you imagine there are non-SEOs using these tools and therefore are not necessarily aware of how to use these tools?
Yeah, for sure. There definitely are non-SEOs using tools like Google Search Console and things like that. I would say one of the main issues is typically not with Google Search Console, because at the very least you'll get some data analysis. Like most marketers will be able to say, oh, okay, I've gotten this many clicks over this period of time. They'll get an idea of that. It's hard to use it wrong. SEMrush is very easy to use wrong, as I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Where you could be like, oh, it's telling me there's a ton of toxic links. I have to remove all of these. Mm-hmm. No, you shouldn't at most cases. Or it's telling me I need to add alt text to a billion images. So I'm going to go and get my whole team to add alt text before we optimize title tags, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just not prioritizing the right things. Alt text would be maybe if you're super aggressive at SEO and you've done everything, you can start optimizing that at scale. Or if it's 50 images, sure. But so the main thing is prioritization that non-SEO people get wrong. Google's Search Console is amazing. I think people understand it and get it right in terms of data analysis, of just looking at the graph and getting an idea of what pages are doing well and what aren't. There's a lot of things that people don't. It's probably the most underutilized tool in SEO.
Yeah.
People just don't know how to use it. Mm-hmm. So in a way they're using it wrong, because they just look at the data, they look at what pages are ranking, and they call it a day. Mm. But there's a ton you can do with Google Search Console. I mean, on big websites, you have just insane amount of keyword data. You just have so many keywords. Stuff like SEMrush, these tools just won't show you that data. And you can get an idea of the search volume from impressions. And so that's where zero click comes in and stuff like that too. Zero click keywords. I think one way people are using it wrong too is not getting the full data. So you can pull it into something like Google Data Studio, or look at it in Google Analytics, and you'll be able to get you'll get the full data. So if you're exporting data, they don't let you get past 1,000. And so that's an easy way to just open up Pandora's box. You have just tens of thousands of keywords on medium to large sites.
You mentioned
and then not taking advantage of the index is important too. So people will not not look at the non-index versus index pages.
Yeah.
And so they won't use that, or they'll just not understand it. And so that's another place where you can kind of dig in for very useful data.
You mentioned zero-click keywords a moment ago. Now, a lot of let's say non-SEOs, right? They get their information from SEOs, and they tend to be very aware of keywords, rankings, search demand. But when it comes to zero clicks, it's almost like a foreign territory for them. Could you very quickly explain what zero click keywords are?
Yeah. So I'm not the best at this. I don't rank zero click keywords all that often. Oh yeah, but I can explain them for sure. And I've used this somewhat in a strategy before. So essentially, keyword research tools like SEMrush, they'll give you a number of like 20 people are searching this per month, or 10,000 people are searching this per month. That's the search volume. But this is all based on not 100% accurate data. And so the data is very just kind of cloudy there. It's from SEMrush, it's not from Google. And so what happens a lot of the time is that people are searching for topics or for keywords or for just ideas, but it's not showing up in the tools. So if you search on SEMrush for a certain keyword, it'll show up as 0 searches. But in reality, if you rank for that and you create an article on that topic, you'll get a lot of traffic. So it's actually not 0 click.
Right.
So they do have traffic there. The easiest way to find these is on Google Search Console, because I was looking at one today. Google Search Console will tell you keywords that you have impressions for. And that means that someone saw it on Google. So they searched something, they saw it on Google, or at least, it was returned in the search results. So that means that people are searching and they're getting that as a potential search result. And you can see how many times that happened. Now, this morning, I even took a keyword and it had 0 search volume, but it had thousands of impressions per month in Google Search Console. So already that just tells me, okay, there is search volume for this. It's just not picked up by the tools. And so those are just easy wins. I don't as much, because I know some people try to kind of pick them out of the air. I pick them from Google Search Console, and then occasionally if there's a topic that, say, the client really knows is crucial, it's foundational to understanding whatever we're talking about, or like the industry. That's where you have industry knowledge. So you know that people care about this and that it's a point of interest. So don't just go off search volume. This is another aspect of being, using your brain and not SEO tools. So using your brain is the best SEO tool. You can see, oh, well, this is a crucial foundational topic. We should talk about this regardless of their search volume. And so those are the two ways that I find actually work is just expert knowledge itself, and then Google Search Console. I typically don't risk and just guess, just throw out an article, unless I'm pretty confident that it's a topic people talk about a lot.
So
so those are 0 search volume keywords.
So as an SEO, it will require a certain level of understanding of the industry, right, that you're working on. Let's say you're working for a finance company. You require a certain level of understanding of finance to be able to identify keywords, or let's say important topics.
0 search, yeah.
So how do you?
For sure, you should rely on the client. You should. Okay. So you should not typically. I mean, I don't rely on my own knowledge, especially again, this morning, I'm working for a very complicated tech company, and there's no way that I can get enough knowledge about this topic to really understand I'm not a developer, right? And you would pretty much have to be, but they have developers. So this is how I navigate. They have developers. And so you talk to the developers. You figure out, you use their knowledge to create a content strategy. And I was just talking to a friend, Tom Shivers. And so he does capture commerce here in Georgia. And he said that he's done this before, which is what I'm going to do, is actually interview the developers. So do exactly what we're doing now. Get an interview. Once you have all the kind of the topics you want to talk about, you can do an interview with them, get all of that expert knowledge out of them. And so kind of extract that, see if there's any topics that maybe we're not covering that comes up, like, oh, to explain this, I have to explain that, right? And so you can use this podcast sort of interview in your content. You can just have it on the page, which is going to increase dwell time, whatever you want to call it. It's going to make the content better typically. You're going to find new keywords. If you re-listen to that interview, you're going to find new keywords. And you can also give that to a writer. So when they're writing, even if they're not as much of an expert, they can gather that information of, oh, okay, for this topic of like, X, these sort of bullet points are what I should be talking about. And so in very technical fields, that's super useful because you're not always going to find someone that's, has a college degree in, some specific tech field, which this is a very, it's not even super specific. So yeah, I think interviewing people for SEO content, interviewing the experts is super useful.
Yeah, it's amazing how much information and data brands have within their business. And sometimes it just takes an SEO person to be able to extract that and create content around it. And that is a very important way of carrying out research. It doesn't necessarily have to be tools based, as you indicated a moment ago. Now, moving on to the SEO community, there is so much to absorb. How do you stay updated with, let's say, relevant information for yourself as an SEO and the clients that you're working on?
Yeah. So, in terms of like updates and just kind of actually staying up to date with search engines, that I typically use like newsletters and my friends, right? So honestly, I don't get that as much. And then I'm like blasted by every social media with anything new that's happening. So that can contribute too. But typically, like in a professional sense, like the stuff I'm going to use for my clients typically are going to be coming from people in the industry that I know. So not social media. And like newsletters and just kind of the old school stuff like Search Engine Journal and classic stuff like that. I'm still figuring out how to condense down the community itself because I just feel bombarded by information most of the time. And so like I'm going through a cleanse on LinkedIn and Twitter and just like unfollowing a lot of people because there's too much information and so much of it is bad. Yeah, so much of it is just not good. It's just like repetitive, whatever it is. Because people do like to say that of like, I'm an expert, I'm going to keep up with all the trends. But that part is actually pretty easy. The Google updates typically aren't crazy. If you're doing SEO correctly, you're not going to get hit too bad by it. If you do, you should, go into a deep dive research for sure. And you really have to figure out what's happening. But typically the updates are useful to analyze, but you can understand baseline pretty quickly. They're probably not going to affect your projects if you're doing SEO correctly. And so I do think that, there's a give and take there. But if you're in the industry, you probably get bombarded by update information, by all this stuff happening. Yeah,
there's a lot to absorb. I find that just scaling back and only focusing on what's necessary is the best approach. A leader's SEO FOMO newsletter.
She's great.
It's a brilliant one
She's great
to subscribe to. So that,
it
and
really
also
is.
focusing on Google updates is pretty much just all you'll need, unless there is something specific necessary for you and the clients that you're working on. From let's say from a frustrations point of view, what do you think clients get most frustrated out of the SEO community?
That's a good question. What do clients get frustrated about from the SEO industry? I mean, if I was a client, it'd be the just lack of the generalizations probably. Right. So like clients doing implementations and seeing no results, because people will just say like, oh, like do this and no matter what, you'll have a huge traffic increase. And so then they do it and then nothing happens. Because the problem with the SEO community, which the good people is not a problem, is that SEO is almost all about testing. And it makes it really hard to create content. Like it's very difficult to create content because everything is situational. It depends. Mm-hmm. Almost everything is situational. So if you're giving general advice, in which I do and everyone has to pretty much, there's going to be a percentage of the time that's not true. And so this becomes really difficult. And so SEO testing and figuring out what works in your industry and for your website and is just so crucial. And I didn't actually realize that until like, a couple years back. I think I was much less into that train of thought, when I started. But eventually you realize that it's really dependent, because you'll get a client and you do the same thing you did for a previous client and it doesn't work and it doesn't increase the growth that it did for the other client. Yeah. So things are super specific. People even talk about getting to a query level, that even queries have different ranking factors. So I think generalization is frustrating. And businesses also, SEOs don't understand business a lot of times. And so they love technical stuff so much. They love these nitty gritty details and they don't focus on the overall business objectives.
Right.
And that
totally agree.
Clients, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to do that. So that's an issue sometimes with SEOs.
Now, let's say in the next 1 to 3 years, right, we can all see AI affecting search, right? How do you reckon this will affect the way users behave with search and what they expect from search?
I have no clue. This is the big unknown for where search is going. It's a super interesting question because, I do see, I mean, at least right now, like our very specific situation, because Bard's being released, Bing is now a thing, I guess. We'll see. But it's super interesting. A part of me thinks that the AI isn't like answering our questions necessarily better. And people really are just, I mean, Google typically answers questions quickly, and fairly well. And so, I'm not confident things will change that much, but, of course they will, but I don't know. I do think that probably the most likely thing is, AI will be adopted and it'll give like essentially the evolution of like the featured snippet, is if you can give answers to people quicker, they're gonna like that. So when I search something, if I want to look at how to build a fire, if you can explain that or show that quicker, I'm happy. And honestly, like for something like that, like how to build a fire, I would just rather Google to just pretty much send me to YouTube. Like I search that and then they just have a featured snippet with a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Because I don't like, I might have written it in Google, but I really want a video. So I think it's just, Google will continue to answer our questions as quick as possible. I think that's a big thing, is quickness. With TikTok and all these things, like real people want answers very quickly. And so we'll see that. I mean, it is also possible. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Because it's also possible search is dead and it's all AI from now on. And of course, I'm joking.
Yeah. It's going to become, I reckon, a lot more comprehensive, right? We're seeing this with stuff like ChatGPT and with stuff like TikTok. And I think users are going to almost expect videos as their sort of answer or response to information. There was a time where content was synonymous with text. I think that's changing now, where content is seen as video. So that's the default way of consuming content. I think also users are going to almost search with the tool that they are on. So TikTok, for example, are very much pushing their search functionality. And people are searching for stuff like recipes, how-tos, those sort of videos. The search on stuff like TikTok, I reckon, is going to increase in a very big way. And if something like that were to happen, I think people will be more interested in personalities, and personalities being equated to brands. So someone looking for information around SEO, they'll be searching for a specific person's take on SEO, for example. Someone looking for how to bake will be looking for a specific brand or personality that they focus on. And I'm seeing this a lot with guys like YouTube stars. So PewDiePie, Mr. Beast, for example, they have a following based on their brand / personality. And all of this, in terms of the way it impacts search, I think is going to lead to a big shift and focus on brand related keywords rather than generic keywords. So SEOs will be more interested in ensuring that they have or they own visibility for brand related terms. And we're seeing this with stuff like, let's say Apple or iPhone, any of their products, in fact. Apple compete with other retailers for their brand related products. We see this, the retail world is full of all of this stuff. I think we're going to see a rise of this type of thing outside of retail, the retail sector. So someone searching for Mr. Beast wouldn't necessarily find that information on Mr. Beast's channel. You'll have other channels that want to rank for that term as well, if we're looking at it in terms of brand and generic terms. I think we're seeing it on YouTube, and we're going to see it on search as well. And all of this, like I said, will just expand search in an unbelievable way. And it's going to be fun times, because share of voice and brand related ownership of your brand is going to increase, I reckon. But these are just guesses. It's one thing for sure.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's got me really extremely excited for search. One thing I would say for sure is Google is most likely going to lose their market share. I don't think someone is going to dominate Google or overtake Google, but this is the biggest threat they have faced, and they're facing it on all fronts. Hence why they quickly want to work on their AI. But it's going to impact their market share. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I think they'll remain dominant.
I'm so excited for it. So excited for it. I hope that they have less market share. So that was really profound of you to say. I think, especially like your whole thing there was great. So video, I think, is going to be extremely important coming up. Like when you were talking, I was thinking like you search a search term and just you get a video pretty much, right? Like the first result is just a video, either YouTube, TikTok, whatever. And so really kind of implementing video into the search engine, I think that's going to be huge because people rely on, nobody trusts anyone on the internet. And that's the video gives you credibility. Yeah. And so it really helps to have that credibility of like, you're reading an article and you don't know who wrote it. There might be a name there, but you don't know. If you're watching a video, that human had to be there. They had to be talking, right? Unless it's AI. So, I mean, I guess this might change, but right now it had to be a real person. And so that credibility is just huge on the internet moving forward. And so I think the video aspect is super interesting. I don't know where that's going. I don't know what's coming there. But I definitely think it will change search a lot. A lot. And I agree. I think that Google is in for, a much needed sort of some market share getting away from them. I think that'd be really good.
Why really good?
Because monopolies aren't good. It's not necessarily a monopoly, but you need more competition. Because also the things we're talking about with like video and stuff, maybe Bing will end up implementing this. Maybe whoever DuckDuckGo will, right? So that competition is going to create better search in the end. It's going to answer our questions better. It's going to cause more competition. And then also the fact that Google Ads is so powerful right now, all of that just on a personal level, I don't like. I'd much rather tech companies be a little bit less powerful and have more competition, at least be, distributed evenly. So that's why I say it's good. I think it's long due.
The next couple of years will be very exciting. I think TikTok has it's a underdog that Google should be worried about, because I think they are a legit threat to Google. The more I spend my time on TikTok, the more I'm realizing these guys are the only issue I think is around the security of it and it being banned in places like the US, UK. But that aside, I think they'll give Google a run for their money, I reckon.
Well, yeah. I don't use TikTok much, so I actually don't know. I've used their search function. To me, I don't think I'd probably search much on TikTok other than stuff that I think would get good results, Like if it's a very like simple how-to, or if it's like I do understand like best suits or something. Like I'd rather look at like some fashion person to learn about suits than Google, which is just going to be like, regurgitated content that's optimized read by whoever nonsense. With the most backlinks. Optimized nonsense. I search a lot on YouTube. A lot of times I'll search on Google and I'll be like, oh, I should have searched on YouTube. If this is clearly a how-to, it's clearly something that needs to be video format. And so, I think search is definitely already broadening.
The way you do so on YouTube, search on YouTube, that's the way the generation coming up do on TikTok. Yeah, so that's why I think TikTok is a legit threat, because they have more of the market share, I reckon, of the new generation of searchers, whereas Google is struggling to acquire them. But it's all theories, right? We'll see. Patrick, thank you so much.
We'll see. We got a lot coming up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. This was super interesting. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Patrick Rice. So Patrick Rice on LinkedIn. I'm also on YouTube, Patrick Rice. And my website is patrickriceco.com. yeah, if you're looking for someone to have a second pair of eyes on your SEO or link building or whatever, feel free to reach out.
Brilliant. I'll have those links in the description, Patrick.